The main connection between paleography and grapholinguistics is their shared field of research, the writing systems. The goal of paleographic research is sometimes positioned outside of the boundaries of linguistics, often completely independent from the language of the research script. In most cases, linguistic problems which are considered are based on the observation of the relationship between grapheme and phoneme. Accepting the writing as a form of expression equal to the speech made it necessary to redefine and recreate an adjusted description of it. In the forefront of observation, the script as completed material prepared for the structural analysis is replaced with writing, a cognitive process that transmits the message from the author to the reader-listener. This view of paleographic research needed a different methodological approach, which was successfully resolved with the invention of the so-called paleographic categories. These categories are not entirely new inventions, but by observing the research material through them, the process of script development became clearer. Letter coordination in the linear system, special letter forms, word dividers, or punctuation and capitalization, use of blank space and separation of words in texts, ligatures and abbreviations, writing of numbers in text are the categories which with the roots visible in the structuralistics concept, and combined with the new approach, they provided some interesting results in the Croatian, Glagolitic, and Cyrillic paleography. The grapholinguistic method in Croatian paleography is a relatively new approach. The key work responsible for its introduction, which correctly frames the opus of Croatian literacy in the broader European context, is Mateos Žagar's Grapholinguistic of Medieval Texts. This book also serves as a solid starting point and a methodological reference in grapholinguistic-based paleographic research. The author is known in the field of Croatian Slavic paleography as one of the most productive names with numerous grapholinguistic studies of Glagolitic and Cyrillic written monuments, mainly from the medieval period. His newest edition, Introduction to Glagolitic Paleography, represents an excellent handbook on the topic written in the English language. Glagolitic script is a unique phenomenon in the world of Paleoslavistic studies. It shows no immediate similarity to any other known script, and its origin is still not thoroughly answered. This complex question is too big for our presentation, but let's just emphasize that there are many exogenous, like Greek Miniscule, Armenian, Georgian, Ethiopian, Samaritan Hebrew, Khazar, Phoenician, or runes theories, endogenous theories like symbolic geometric concept, cross circle, and the triangle combination by Chernokhvostov, or rosette module by Yonchev, as well as author theories, Saint Constantine philosopher and the Moravian mission being the most reliable one. From all these theories derived the conclusion that the author of the script is most probably Saint Constantine, who had excellent knowledge of many of the context scripts. Yonchev's letter module shouldn't be dismissed. Still, having in mind the broad distribution of this geometric element, it is hard to say if it was indeed the author's intention to create letters according to this module, or if the reconstruction of this schema was a byproduct of the deductive research process. What was first, chicken or the egg? Within the frame of Croatian Glagolitic paleography, the most exciting event occurred between the end of the 12th and the first half of the 13th century, with the formation of the angular Glagolitic version of the script. Unlike the earlier round Glagolitic script, the angular version was almost entirely in use only in territory of the Croatian coast and part of the hinterland situated west of the river Krka, while the Cyrillic script became dominant east of that border. This is the most simplified explanation of the Glagolitic Cyrillic diachronic aspect of Croatian medieval literacy. The Latin script is the third part of this equation, and it was simultaneously used with the mentioned scripts. Croatian medieval literal heritage is a complex and rich phenomenon that may be best described with Edward Hercigonja's definition, triliterate and trilingual culture of the Croatian Middle Ages. The development process of the angular glagolitic script is much easier to understand if observed through the category of letter coordination in the linear system. The formation of the letter module in any script is directly related to its linear organization. In the case of the round glagolitic script, the two-line linear organization was responsible for the coordination of the letters and the creation of the recognizable letter module presented by Yonchev. In the 13th century European literacy, the process of minusculization of the script took place. Because of this rise of scribal awareness that the written message should be delivered faster, the advanced writing techniques and the development of the angular cuts to the tip of the quill conditioned the transition to the four-linear text organization, in which the original two lines became the central part of the new system. The main letter parts are coordinated in this central area, while the so-called weak ones, mostly hyperextended lines, which can be seen here, like at letter G, the fourth letter, which are not crucial for the recognition of the letter itself, but are helpful for the visual organization in the text, bridge the upper or the lower line, sometimes even both. The adjustment of complex angular glagolitic letters to the four-line linear system created new square letter module divided into 6 equal parts. That was the one before. This module was not an exact graphic orientation. It emerged as a concept developed by the minusculization of letter forms. This process also initiated the transition from round to angular letter lines, which eventually bore the name to the different script types. The most significant morphological change in the script. With it came the change in the letter field that opened the way for the more extensive use of ligatures, which is a special form of abbreviation where the combination of 2 or more letters shape a new object. Palaeographic researches like those conducted as part of the projects of the Scientific Center of Excellence for Croatian Glagolitism, which is the biggest project of our Old Church Slavonic Institute, showed the great frequency of ligature writing in the Glagolitic liturgic books. For example, the second breviary of Beram had 322 ligature combinations, which were recorded more than 30,000 times in its 264 folios. The meticulous paleographic researches of the first and second Beram breviary are representative examples of the newest studies of Croatian Glagolitic literacy, completely based on the grapholinguistic approach. Soon, the Scientific Center of Excellence for Croatian Glagolitism plans to complete 2 more similar types of research for first and second Beram Misal, and in this way represent the literal wealth of the Beram scriptomy. Beram is situated in central Istria. These projects are by nature not just paleographic. Each edition includes printed facsimile and transliteration, and studies of morphology, syntax, writing system, phonology, and text, and lexism. Besides the printed edition, the created digital database contains the virtual dictionary with the grammatical and morphological description of each word. Graphatic organization of the Glagolitic texts, visual placement of text on page from the division into lines, the formation of word blocks and abandonment of scriptura continua, abbreviations, punctuations, the inclusion of different letter size and types, use of blank space as word divisors is a category which gained more attention in the recent researches. Unlike the traditional paleographers, who avoided systematic overviews, the grapholinguistic method accentuates the realization that the changes in the letter forms take place during changes in the visual transposition of text. As a result, some patterns between round and angular Glagolitic script have been successfully recognized. Blank space is the main word divider, and its use in the 7th century British and Irish scriptoria marked the beginning of the word separation process, abandonment of scriptura continua. In the context of Glagolitic texts, the use of blank space can be discussed after the establishment of angular Glagolitic script, that means 13th century. The more frequent use of initials for chapter marking, versals for segmentation of texts, and punctuations came with it. The liturgical angular glagolitic written text punctuations were written frequently in the bottom middle of almost every blank space. Another use of punctuations was the numerals marking. Numerals were, as was the case in Cyrillic script, written with the help of letters. Each letter had its number value, and punctuations together with the addition of a superscripted horizontal line or titlo served as the method of recognition between them and the standard letters. This praxis is common to Glagolitic and Cyrillic script. The difference is that the Cyrillic script started to use Arabic numerals more often in the 15th century, specifically diplomatic Miniscule script, which we will learn more about later. So here we have one page from the first Beram breviary, just to show you the graphatic text organizations. If you recognize some letters, we can also see that there are many abbreviations. For example, from the great initial, we have V, ono, vrijeme, and then the four next letters, 5 letters, are really 4 different words. Reče Isus učenikom svojim. So, okay, this here. Reče Isus učenikom svojim. So the use of abbreviations, suspensions, contractions, and superscriptions, together with before mentioned ligatures, as a method of saving time and space, is another graphatic tool used more in the angular Glagolitic script. This data represents yet another interesting fact proven in recent research. Although this tradition, this more frequent use of abbreviation was recognized by traditional palaeographers, the magnitude of difference in its use between observed scripts became visible after the completion of the mentioned above research. So these are just some abbreviations taken, which I took from the London parchment of Apollonius Missal. You can see the contraction, Caesar, Cesarstvet, Boga, which is like holy word, etc. Unlike the Glagolitic, the origin of Cyrillic script is pretty straightforward. Based on the Greek uncial script, it developed during the First Bulgarian Empire, end of early 10th century, and under the cultural influence of the Byzantines. The change in the linear system and the script's minusculization in the 14th century is the most interesting dynamic observed in my grapholinguistic-based research and also doctoral thesis of the script regarding the Croatian medieval literacy. It covers development processes in Graphian script of Cyrillic charters and documents from Dubrovnik Slavic medieval office and their relationship in the broader geopolitical context, especially in diplomatic correspondence with neighboring countries and principalities like medieval Bosnia, Hum, Duklja, Serbia, different feudal autonomous rulers, but also with more prominent entities like the Ottoman Empire. Chronologically, the research covers the period from the end of the 12th to the end of the 15th century and follows graphical characteristics of the script used in Dubrovnik's medieval Slavic chancery. The research material included around 50 representative charters and documents from the Croatian State Archive in Dubrovnik. This institution has one of the biggest collections of Cyrillic documents in the Balkans, counting around 10,000 units. Exact number is unknown. The greatest focus of the research was on the so-called diplomatic minuscule, a script mainly used in diplomatic, business, and legal communication, hence the name. This script is graphologically very different from the widespread Ustav, a two-linear-based solemn version of Cyrillic script, mainly used for liturgical purposes. The transition from the 2 to 4 line linear text organization, the main characteristic of the minusculization process, conditioned the morphology of a significant number of letters in the script. We can observe some of them starting from the end of the 12th century in the Charter of Ban Kulin, a trade agreement between the Banat of Bosnia and the Republic of Ragusa. Some letter form starts to develop the morphological character. Letter A, like, begins to show signs of elongation of its main vertical line. The elongated vertical line is its main characteristic in diplomatic minuscule. The same elongation pattern of so-called weak letter parts is recognized in the letter Z and H, where the lower lines drop beneath the lower row line. These morphological characteristics mark the beginning of the process of minusculization. And the elongated letter lines slowly start to disintegrate the two-line schema of the Ustav, and with the transition to the four-line schema, we witness the development of the new script. The morphological traits of diplomatic minuscule are traced in the charter of the Bulgarian Tsar Ivan Asen II. This charter is also a trade agreement that regulates the trade rights of Ragusan's merchant. Written in 1230, it represents one of the few preserved documents from the 13th century written in this way. The elongation of the letter lines that bridge the linear system can be seen in the letters A, Z, R, U, H, C, and the Yat. Like in the Charter of Ban Kulin, the letter K is written with separated letter lines. Standardization of diplomatic minuscule took place in the 14th century. In the various documents from Dubrovnik and neighboring chanceries, we can recognize all the main morphological features of the newly created script. Because of the changes in the line system, the letter V lost its recognizable bellies and took the square-shaped form. The letter D was rotated 90 degrees to the left. Some of the changes that can be related to the influence of Latin are connected to the letters N and Ch. The N was written identical to its Latin counterpart, while the letter Ch took shape similar to the Latin letter V. And the last morphological change that took place in 15th century is the rotation of letter B for 90 degrees to the right, simplified its writing in the four-line system. This characteristic can be easily recognized in the documents of the two most productive members of Dubrovnik Slavic Chancery of that time, Rusko Hristoforović and Nikša Zvijezdić. Also, the morphological characteristics of the line elongation is visible in numerals letters in the diplomatic minuscule script. The use of abbreviations in their forms is recorded in most Cyrillic written documents. The frequency is relatively small compared to the Glagolitic script. The most used abbreviations were superscripts, contractions, and combination of superscript and contraction. The commonly spread examples include some of the liturgical names and adjectives like Christa, Svetih, Milost, etc. You can see them here. The absence of ligature is also interesting for the Cyrillic script. The use of punctuations, initials, and letters is somewhat similar to the Glagolitic. The most significant difference is that the Cyrillic script had a smaller transition in the minusculization process, so we can see the abandonment of scriptura continua earlier than in the Glagolitics. Since the Cyrillic research material included only profane documents, their initials appear on a much smaller scale when compared to the Glagolitic script. Besides, numerals, punctuations are also used in the text to end sentences and more extensive text chapters. Sometimes they were even accompanied by the writing of the capital letter. This is just one part of the trade agreement, the fragment, just to see the graphatic organization. The presented examples are just a fraction of the conducted grapholinguistically based paleographic research. Bearing in mind the time limit, the author's intention was to present a solid blueprint of this topic and to promote the use of grapholinguistic method, which is relatively new in the frame of the Croatian medieval paleography. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a question. In books I found in Russia and Slavonic, so liturgical books, there was complete Greek accentuation, so accents and breathings, acute, grave, circumflex, and the two breathings. And I haven't seen that in any one of your examples, only in the last there were accents. How come?
Yeah, that's just one of the differences between the liturgic and profane texts. This kind of script, diplomatic minuscule, well, the terminology of the script, I call it, I propose the name diplomatic minuscule, is known for these special morphological forms, like the we, the rotated D, the elongated lines, and also with the lack of the accents, as you noticed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can find accents in Old Church Slavonic Orthodox books, but not in this kind of documents.
And these accents have no phonological realization?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Any question? So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.